another thing to really understand about this system is that it is super corporate. It's very corporate. It's a business and you're a business. And that means that the advantage goes to the people. The people who will be more successful in this business are the people who are more savvy. They are the people who are less timid. You know, it's not necessarily the people who are the most creative, the most talented, and the hardest workers. Frankly, it is also a bit of luck as well. So it's like that mix of talent, hard work, and savviness and confidence to put yourself out there, because the timid people don't get as far. They don't get as much work because, again, we're in a very corporate ecosystem where the squeaky wheel kind of gets the grease. It's not this quiet, brilliant person who, is just sitting in a corner and doesn't put their work out there. I'm Charla Lariston. I've been a TV writer for almost a decade, but it wasn't that long ago that quitting my day job and moving to Hollywood was nothing but a pipe dream. After lots of failures, many mistakes, and many lessons learned, I've now written for 7 TV shows, 2 features, and sold 3 TV pilots. I've done all this through imposter syndrome, burnout, and with zero roadmap. On the Working Writer podcast, I pull back the curtain on breaking in and teach screenwriters and creatives how to thrive both personally and professionally. Without further ado, let's get to work. What's up, party people? Welcome to another episode of the Working Writer podcast. It is me, Charla. Thank you so much for joining me once again. If you're wondering why am I doing a terrible British accent, it's just because, hey, that's how I started it and that's how we're going to do it. I'm recording from Porto, Portugal. I am randomly on a solo trip. If you're wondering where I've just been around. I've just been out and about, just kind of doing a little bit of resting, kind of long-term resting. I realize that I'm someone who has basically been working since childhood, and my mind just needs deep rest. And what I've had to do is just kind of accept that I can't control the length and breadth of this break. And that's where I'm at in my life. So if you're wondering, that's where I am and that's what I'm doing. And I've still honestly really struggled to keep this consistent. I find I do a lot of this by myself, and I find that ideating, editing, posting, it takes a lot of work out of me. So I'm doing my best to be consistent one day, but I'm not there, girl. So yeah, just gonna have to deal. But thank you so much for listening. If you've continued to listen, I hope that you found this podcast helpful. I'm coming to you today because I have been talking to a few screenwriter friends of mine who are a little bit earlier in their careers, and they've had more questions for me regarding getting repped by a manager, and also how to deal with a manager once they've got them. So I've had people come to me because they're looking to get repped, and I've also had people come to me because they are repped and they don't know how to deal with a manager that they're unhappy with. So I wanted to take this podcast episode and kind of talk about it a little bit more in depth. I did do a podcast episode a while ago that's on my YouTube. It's on my podcast called How to Get Repped. It's called something like that. I'll link it down in the description, but it was only 7 minutes. And I feel like I didn't really go deep into it. I really just talked about how to get repped, but I want to take the time in this episode to kind of go a little bit deeper into it. So one of the biggest issues I had as a new writer was not knowing how to get a manager, and then later not knowing how to handle my manager once. And what I mean by that is not knowing how to handle the relationship with my manager once I had one. And what I found was in both instances in my career, both when I was looking for a manager and not sure how to get one, and also when I had one and didn't know how to manage one, or didn't know how to manage my relationship with them, I found it incredibly difficult to get that information from anywhere. I couldn't get that information from my friends. My writer friends also didn't know how to handle their manager. I couldn't obviously ask my manager because then she'd know that I have an issue with her and I didn't know how to broach it or approach it. And then I didn't really find it in any kind of like literature. There was no like book I could find on how to like manage your manager. If you know of one, please put it in the comments or something, or send me an email at Charla at Get That Work and let me know so I can share that resource. But generally, I found that this thing was nowhere to be found. I found that this information, and I find in general that you'll find classes on how to write your script, but you won't find classes on how to deal with the professional business side of being a screenwriter. And so I have offered a course on that. I do hope to bring that course back eventually. And this is exactly why, because I just feel like this information is not really readily available. So I want to talk today about what I've learned over 10 years in the industry about how to get repped and how to work with a rep. And I want to start by giving you context. And I think that this is super important because I feel like a lot of writers come into the industry only thinking about their own creativity, their own career, and their own work that they want to create. It's very self-centered, the way that most of us enter the industry. We're only thinking about ourselves, which is not wrong, but I think it really holds you back when you're navigating the industry because you have a very narrow view of the industry as a whole. And so what I'm trying to say is that I think in order for you to first get it when I'm talking about how to find a manager and how to manage your relationship with your manager, you have to understand the wider context, zoom out, and see the big picture of what kind of system you're working inside of. And so if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm going to put up a visual, but really the visual is just the whole industry of Hollywood is made up of just a bunch of independent businesses, including you. Just like Netflix or Sony or NBC is an independent entity in business, so are you. You provide your services to a place like Netflix, to a place like Sony. And agents and managers are the go-between. They are the gatekeepers. They are the facilitators of you and the companies that need your services. So I think it's really important to look at this like that, because then you won't think that your manager or agent is the end all be all. And here's why. Yes, in the past, before technology, before social media, it was like the gatekeeping that managers and agents did was really important. And it was really difficult. You really physically had to be in LA for people to literally see you, for people to connect with you, to know what you do, what services you provide, who needs those services, they can connect you. You know what I mean? But that's kind of really fallen away now, hasn't it? Yes, the gatekeepers, the managers and agents of the industry did really important work in the past because they were the ones that a lot of times were gauging your skill level. They'll read your script and they'll be like, this person is ready. This person is fantastic. Their writing is really high level. It's really original. It's really creative. Let's send this script over to Netflix. I know they're staffing for a TV show. That was a really important function that the managers and agents provided. But that function is getting more and more eroded because of the internet. More and more, you don't need an agent or manager to be like, oh, this person is good. I vetted them. They're going to go through. A lot of times, people are just looking at what people are posting on social media to gauge whether or not they are skilled. And I think that there's a problem with this because social media is not always a good way to gauge whether or not somebody is actually skilled. Whether or not somebody is, has a million followers on TikTok and is posting a bunch of small videos doesn't actually mean that they know how to write a long form piece of work and can sustain an actual show. So, the industry itself is dealing with this new way of gauging and vetting talent, basically. So I say all that to say that I still think that even though the ways that we are vetting talent is changing, and even though manager and agent, I think that their place in the system is becoming eroded, it's still important and it still serves a necessary function. But I think what's important to know when you're looking at this, overall system that I'm telling you about how everybody is a independent contractor and how agents and managers are really just a go-between, a gatekeeper. They're the ones that are vetting the talent, making sure that the people who are actually talented get through to these bigger companies like Netflix and Amazon and CBS and all those other things. Ultimately, another thing to really understand about this system is that it is super corporate. It's very corporate. It's a business and you're a business. And that means that the advantage goes to the people. The people who will be more successful in this business are the people who are more savvy. They are the people who are less timid. It's not necessarily the people who are the most creative, the most talented, and the hardest workers. Frankly, it is also a bit of luck as well. So it's like that mix of talent, hard work, and savviness and confidence to put yourself out there, because the timid people don't get as far. They don't get as much work because, again, we're in a very corporate ecosystem where the squeaky wheel kind of gets the grease. It's not this quiet, brilliant person who, is just sitting in a corner and doesn't put their work out there. So that leads me. So how do you get repped? You get repped by creating your best work and putting it out there. That's really what it is. But here's what I actually really want to tell you, that in order to attract the best manager possible, and in order to attract a manager, period, what you really have to do is become that manager for yourself. And let me break down why. I hope this episode is helpful and not crazy because I feel like it's all over the place. But let me break down why the only way to get a manager or to attract one is to become that manager for yourself. So a lot of creatives think that they should get a manager just because they really want one or because they've written one thing and it was pretty good and now they're looking for a manager. But that's not actually how it works. Like, again, let's look at the big picture, right? You're in an ecosystem of everybody's an independent contractor. You're an independent contractor. Netflix is an independent contractor. And these managers and agents are actively looking for talent so that they can feed to these corporations and say, hey, look, I have this writer slash business person, because that's really what you are, who is really good. But the only way that they're going to recognize you as a business person and someone who is ready to be, introduced to places like Netflix and things like that is if you literally have created enough business for yourself for them to manage. And so here's what I'm saying is that if you are looking for a manager, but you don't actively have things for them to manage, you're probably not ready for a manager. Now that can look very different for very different reasons. You know what I mean? Like, it's hard to gauge how much you need to have to manage for a manager to step in. But ultimately, you have to manage yourself and build up your own business, build up your own body of work. That means that you need to have more than one script in your body of work. That means it might be helpful if you're trying to be a writer director or something like that to, finance your own short or find financing for your short, direct it, send it to film festivals. You literally have to do the work first. And then you create once you get that attention for your work. I have a former student. She's the host of No Film School, and she just did a project that got into South by Southwest. Now, if she's not repped yet, this is a fantastic way to get repped because, frankly, she now has something for them to manage. She has a film that's going to Southwest. That could potentially be sold somewhere else. That could potentially go to Hulu or go to some other place. Now she has things for them to do. She has things for them to literally manage. She's going to need them to facilitate if that, because South by Southwest is just like Sundance is a, marketplace for films and scripts and things like that. So when she's going to this marketplace, she'll need some facilitator like a manager, like an agent, potentially a lawyer, that if she's approached by someone to sell this film, that they're going to need to, manage the deal for her. So does that make sense? Do you see the difference between somebody that literally needs a manager because they have things for the person to manage versus somebody who just has a script, feels ready, but isn't actually ready because they don't understand the amount of work that needs to be, surrounding you and hovering you, and the amount of attention that you're kind of like getting from your work and with your work to attract a manager. And if you are at something like South by Southwest or at Sundance or whatever, and you're unrepped, it is also a great bargaining chip to get a rep. Now, this is a great time to be like, hey, I'm at Southwest, I'm at Sundance, and I'm not repped. And this will be a wonderful time to attract managers and agents. And if you are in the position where your work has created the situation that it needs to be managed and you attract a manager, you have all of the leverage to really think about, hey, what kind of manager do I want? What kind of relationship do I want with this manager? And what am I looking for? I think this was my biggest mistake. When I first started getting courted by managers and agents, I didn't know what I was looking for because no one told me. Like, I have no idea what the function. I had no idea what the function of a manager and agent was at the time. Like, at the time for me, like, I thought it was just they were going to get me jobs. I didn't understand that I was the one getting myself jobs and that I would always be the one getting myself jobs. And these people are really just facilitators. They're really just the go-betweens. They're really just the negotiators. They negotiate on your behalf. But you're always driving your career. You're keeping your reps by continuing to work. People get dropped when they don't continue to produce work because the agents and managers don't have anything to manage. You see, they have to have something to manage, babe. And if you're not working all the time, then they don't have as much to manage. And you're in danger of getting dropped, which is, again, not the worst thing in the world. People, agencies, management companies drop clients all the time. Clients drop managers and agents and lawyers all the time. It's super normal. And if we all understood how normal it was, it wouldn't feel so scary to do it when you do need to do it. Which it was super scary for me. It was super scary for me to drop my manager and my agents when I needed to do it because I didn't really understand how normal it was and I didn't understand their function and I didn't really know what I wanted in a rep. So I think understanding first the overall big picture of what the industry is like, how the industry works, how it's just a bunch of independent contractors working together. And these managers and agents are facilitators between the creatives and the companies that hire them. I think once you understand that, and once you understand that, you're ready for the way to get a manager is to attract one by managing yourself very well, creating the work that will attract them so that you have something for them to manage. then I think that changes the way that you go into the relationship, because then you're not going into the relationship all like, oh, I need you because you're the one that's going to get me a job. You're the one that is like my connection to the industry. And I think that that's only partially true. Like, you need them to get you a job in the sense that it would be like trying to go directly to, um, I mean, like, they're basically the HR of Hollywood. Reps, managers, and agents they're the HR of Hollywood. It would just be, without them, you would just go directly to the person that's hiring, which happens all the time. You know, so, but if you do it that way, then you don't have anyone necessarily to negotiate for you, unless you are someone who just is very bold and or you have a lot of connections, you have a lot of friends in the industry, you've worked with a lot of people and they know you and they know your work. So you don't necessarily need reps all the time to send in your script or your resume or whatever. It's really just your script, or your short or whatever they're watching to gauge whether or not you are somebody that they might want for this job. But they would still need to negotiate the contract for you, because you're not a lawyer, you're not an agent, you don't actually know a lot of this jargon that's being used in these deals, and you need somebody to walk you through it. So that's really what you need them for. But getting dropped by them, not getting picked by them, is not the end all be all of your career. Yes, it means that you might have to do a little bit more footwork, like a little bit more work on your own, but you would always have to do that work. You're always going to have to do work. And I think that that's one of the things that really messes people up when they get repped, is that they basically sit on their haunches after they get repped. So they get repped, they think, okay, I made it, I'm repped, I can chill and just kind of wait for this person to, send me into meetings and help my career forward and kind of guide me. But that was one of my biggest mistakes, was I kind of just was like, okay, well, I got repped, great. And that's really just not their job. A lot of these reps are not mentors. They're not here to guide you. They don't actually know how to do it. They actually have not walked the creative path that you're walking. They're walking their own very different path, which is that they're trying to, shine at the management company, or they're trying to shine as managers, or they're trying to shine as agents in their agency, which means getting you the biggest deals, making the best connections, elbowing out other competition. Like, they're doing their own thing. You are in your lane doing your thing, which means that, looking to your manager or agent as a mentor might, it might make the relationship difficult, because that's not actually their function. If you are looking for a manager or an agent who does act somewhat like a mentor, that's something that you should think about and write down before you meet with managers and agents. What kind of vibes are you looking for? What kind of temperament are you looking for? What level of communication are you looking for? Like, I remember my first agent, who it was a fantastic person, but she didn't like to communicate certain aspects of the deal with me, or all aspects of the deal. She liked to say things like, I'll handle it, you don't have to worry. And I think maybe she thought that that was great. But I was very interested in knowing about my deals and the structure of them, and how, because I'm the one who's going to have to provide the service. So I'm going to want to know. Like, I'm not somebody who wants my agents and managers to just handle everything and not tell me anything, and me just assume that I'll be fine. That's actually terrifying for me, and I don't like that. But some people like that. So once you have gotten to the point where you have managed yourself like a freaking queen, and you've gotten yourself on the map somewhere, you've gotten yourself into some competition, you've gotten yourself some recognition somewhere, you're attracting some heat, you're attracting potential managers, it's a really fantastic time to sit down and think, hey, what kind of energy do I want in my life right now as a creative? Do I need somebody who's going to be a mentor? Do I need somebody who is going to be communicative with me? Do I need someone who I like? Do I not care so much if I don't like them? If I think that they're a really good business person? think about what you want just so that you have a sense, not like you're going to find the perfect thing or you're going to potentially, find that perfect person. But I didn't even think about what I wanted because I didn't think that I had a choice. I basically was just like, I'm going to take the biggest, best person that comes to me without thinking about who is actually best for me as a creative. It's also okay if you don't know what you want, because I was so green when I first started in the industry. I had no idea what I wanted, what trajectory I wanted, like what kind of rep I wanted. I didn't know. But I do wish that I wasn't so, that I didn't view them or perceive them as basically like gods, like as the end all be all, as like basically they're in charge of me when really we're partners. And I'm in charge of me, they're in charge of them, and we come together to make my career as seamless and go as far as possible. It's really teamwork. You really do need them for certain things, and they need you to be as creative as possible, create as much work as you possibly can, and to push yourself as much as possible. Here's another thing is I had agents and managers that pushed me a lot to do things that I didn't necessarily think I wanted to do. And what I wish I had known was that I could have just been like, you know what, I really need to think about it. Instead of having this mindset of I'm an employee of theirs and I basically do whatever they want me to do, which is how the mindset that I had, because I had never had anything other than a 9 to 5 job. And in a 9 to 5 job, you're an employee and you do whatever your employer tells you to do. But when you transition into creative work where you are an independent contractor working amongst other independent contractors, it means that you have to be very self-possessed. You have to have a sense of your limits, how much you can work, how much you can't work. You have to really advocate for yourself in terms of your schedule, which is something that I thought somebody was going to do that for me, but it turned out I had to do that for myself. And you just have to have a sense of like, hey, what matters to me? What's important to me? What do I want to do? Am I just honestly just trying to work as much as possible right now so that I can build up my resume, so that I can build up my coffers as well? Because I've been, a part-time worker for years as I've been trying to break into the industry. It's really up to you. And there's no shame or shade in your game. It's really about what you want to do. But I think the most important thing to remember is that you do get to choose and you do get to structure and create and design this creative life of yours. And your manager and your agent are partners to that. They are not the conduits of it. They're not the ones who are going to do it for you, and they will never do it for you. And if someone is doing it for you, it's giving control. It's giving too much overreach to me, because that's not something that I would like. But if that's something that you like, if that's something that you develop with an agent or manager, then that's okay. If that's something that you like and you really, really trust them. And so I feel like if you have this mindset, right, you have this mindset that I am an independent contractor, I'm a business person, I contract out my work, whether it's writing services, acting services, directing, cinematography. I contract out my work to these other entities. My agent and manager is a go-between me and these other agencies and entities. And I feel like once you have that mindset, then when you need to fire an agent or manager, or when conflict bubbles up and you need to address it, you address it in a very different way, because you are not thinking, oh, I'm their employee, I'm going to get in trouble. You're thinking we're partners, and something has come up that is impeding my ability to do my job or making me unhappy. Like it's making me feel like I'm not going in the direction that I want with my career. And it is your job literally to address it, and to think about how you would like it to go moving forward. Because imagine if you owned a business and you saw that something was going on in the business that was really killing the business, that was really like, It's making you lose money. It's not being it's making you fail as a business. Would you be too afraid to address it? I mean, even if you were afraid, you would still have to address it because ultimately it is your business and you want it to be successful. So that is the same way that I would suggest thinking about a relationship with a rep. If something happens where it is becoming untenable, it's like I feel like a lot of us creatives, we have so much fear and anxiety, fear that we'll be dropped, fear that whatever, when we're going to talk to our managers and agents. But and yes, like that fear is legitimate. It's 100% legitimate. I'm not saying that like you won't get into some sort of conflict that they might drop you, but the idea that you need them more than they need you is just not the truth. It's just not the truth. They would have they would have no commission if you didn't sell your script. They would have no commission if you didn't get hired on a show. You are literally their livelihood. Your work is your livelihood and their livelihood, which is why I always bring it back to your work. I think that your work and the amount of work you produce that you're proud of, and I'm not talking about like a level of productivity. We'll do that in another episode because I feel like a lot of us feel very guilty and ashamed when we don't produce a ton of work, but that's not the point. The point of the matter is, I think ultimately, like, your work is beautiful. Your work is something that comes from you, whether or not it gets bought or sold or gets you a job. It is life-giving. It is something that could get you a job. It could get you recognition. It could get you repped, and that's amazing. Like, I still think that the fact that you could write something and it can get you into South by or it can get you a job, that's amazing. And they're not the ones doing that. You're the one doing that. So don't forget how important your well-being is, because if your well-being is not there, then you can't get the work you need to get done. And if you can't get the work you need to get done, then you cut into your livelihood and their livelihood. So again, I hope that this was helpful to you. I hope that this episode has helped you understand that in order to get a good manager, you have to be a good manager to yourself first. And that, as always, that you get out there and you get to work. If you like this episode, please like, subscribe, share, or leave a comment for the algorithm gods.